The courthouse loomed over the small city street like a silent guardian of justice, its tall stone columns casting long shadows in the late morning sun. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, a mixture of formality and anticipation. Reporters crowded into the back, cameras clicking sporadically. Microphones perched like curious birds, while family members and citizens took their seats, whispers echoing through the high-ceilinged chamber. The murmur of anxious conversation created an undercurrent of unease that only deepened when the judge entered. His robe seemed heavier than usual, as if the weight of the case before him pressed on the air itself. Among the crowd sat a little girl, no more than 3 years old, perched on her mother's lap. Her wide, innocent eyes scanned the room, reflecting the gleam of the polished wood and the solemn faces surrounding her. The girl was dressed simply a soft pink dress with tiny, embroidered flowers, but her presence drew more attention than her attire ever could. Adults in the courtroom often whispered and glanced down at her, noting the contrast between her tiny stature and the gravity of the situation. She held a small stuffed rabbit in her arms, squeezing it lightly whenever she felt overwhelmed, yet she seemed unusually calm, almost as if she understood, in her own childlike way, that something important was about to unfold. At the front of the room, near the witness stand, stood a large, alert police dog named Rex. His coat was a mix of golden and brown, shining under the overhead lights, and his posture was one of disciplined readiness. He did not fidget or bark. Instead, he remained intensely focused, ears twitching at the smallest sounds, nose slightly damp, and eyes that seemed to read the room with almost human awareness. Beside him, his handler, Officer Daniels, stood tall and calm, a picture of quiet authority. Rex had been part of numerous investigations, but this was different. The dog was about to be called upon in a courtroom, a place filled with unfamiliar sights, sounds and pressures that no street or alleyway could replicate. The case at hand was serious. A local convenience store had been robbed just days earlier, leaving the small community shaken. Though no human witnesses could confirm all the details of the crime, Rex had been instrumental in the investigation. The dog had tracked the suspect's scent through winding alleys, over fences, and past busy streets, leading officers to crucial evidence that might otherwise have remained undiscovered. Now the outcome of the trial hinged, in part, on the dog's ability to demonstrate his accuracy under scrutiny. Every eye in the courtroom, from judge to jury to lawyer, was trained on this extraordinary animal. Tension filled the air as the defense lawyer stood, adjusting his suit jacket, his sharp gaze sweeping the courtroom. He had spent the morning methodically questioning witnesses, attempting to cast doubt on the reliability of Rex's testimony. A dog cannot speak. A dog cannot reason. How can you be certain his behavior indicates what you claim? He asked, his voice carrying easily over the hushed room. There was a murmur of agreement from some in the audience, particularly those skeptical of relying on a non-human witness. Yet the police officer's expression remained unchanged. He knew Rex's training, and he trusted the dog's instincts implicitly. The little girl watched all of this with wide, unblinking eyes. While she could not understand the specifics of the legal arguments, she sensed the serious tone, the tension in the adults' voices, and the rigid formality of the courtroom. Her tiny hand, clutching her mother's, occasionally reached out to stroke the soft fur of her stuffed rabbit, a comforting ritual she had developed whenever she felt uncertain. The mother whispered gentle reassurances, smoothing the girl's hair and encouraging her to stay calm. "Just watch, sweetheart," she murmured. "It's all going to be okay." The girl nodded solemnly, as if she understood more than words could express. The judge cleared his throat, and the courtroom fell silent instantly. "We will now call the K-9 unit to the stand," he announced, his voice resonant and commanding. The sound seemed to ripple through the chamber, and the girl's eyes widened even further. She had seen dogs before, of course, but nothing like this. A fully trained, highly disciplined police dog participating in a serious courtroom procedure. She leaned forward slightly, curiosity sparkling in her gaze. There was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air, a feeling shared by everyone present. Something remarkable was about to happen, though no one could predict exactly what. Officer Daniels stepped forward, giving Rex a slight nod. The dog moved with purpose, paws clicking softly against the polished wood floor. Every movement was precise, controlled, and deliberate, the result of months and years of rigorous training. As they reached the witness stand, Daniels crouched slightly, maintaining eye contact with Rex, silently communicating confidence and reassurance. The courtroom held its collective breath. This was more than just a demonstration. It was a test, a moment that could influence the verdict in a case that had captured the community's attention. The defense attorney narrowed his eyes, leaning over his table. "We will see if this dog truly understands the evidence, or if this is merely trained behavior, easily manipulated or misinterpreted," he declared, voice tinged with skepticism. The audience shifted in their seats. Even some of the seasoned journalists, accustomed to courtroom dramas, felt a twinge of intrigue. There was a story unfolding here unlike any they had witnessed before. The human and animal dynamic promised something both extraordinary and profoundly moving. And then, from the back of the courtroom, the little girl stirred. She had been watching silently, observing Rex with keen interest. Something about the dog seemed to call to her, a curiosity, a recognition, or perhaps an instinctive connection. Without prompting, she released her mother's hand and began toddling toward the front of the courtroom. The murmur rose instantly, whispers of "oh," and "look at her," floating through the air. Her small figure moved confidently, yet carefully, toward Rex. The judge raised an eyebrow, but allowed it, sensing that the child's presence might actually become significant in this unusual case. After all, the innocence of a child often brings clarity that adults miss. Reaching the dog, the girl stopped and looked directly into Rex's eyes. There was a moment of heartbeat where the room seemed to pause entirely. The tension, the skepticism, the anticipation all melted into an almost magical stillness. The little girl leaned slightly forward and spoke softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. "It's okay," she said. The words floated through the air, unassuming, simple, yet charged with an unexpected authority. The dog's ears perked, his body relaxed, and for the first time that morning, the courtroom felt the shift in energy. Everyone noticed it, a subtle but undeniable change. Even Officer Daniels, trained to remain calm under pressure, allowed himself a small smile. Rex, responding not to commands, but to the innocence and sincerity of a child, had revealed a side of his behavior no one had anticipated. The courtroom, filled with adults steeped in the complexities of law and evidence, suddenly recognized the extraordinary power of trust, innocence, and intuition. A 3-year-old had entered the room, and in her quiet, simple way, she had become a key participant in a serious judicial process. As the girl stood there, hands clasped behind her back, the mother exhaled softly, a mix of pride and astonishment. The audience, jurors, and even reporters leaned forward, captivated. No one moved, no one whispered, no one blinked too quickly. The entire chamber had shifted its attention, collectively realizing that the unfolding moment was unlike anything they had expected. The courtroom, once tense and uncertain, now hummed with a quiet sense of awe and wonder. And in that moment, it became clear. The tiniest, most innocent presence could carry weight beyond measure, capable of bridging gaps between doubt and clarity, skepticism and truth. The morning sunlight had barely warmed the streets of the small city when the crime occurred. A local convenience store, known to many residents as a friendly corner spot, where kids bought candy and neighbors exchanged greetings, had been broken into. The store owner, Mr. Harris, arrived early that day to open the shop, only to find the door ajar and the cash register emptied. Panic and disbelief rippled through the small community. How could someone brazenly commit a robbery in broad daylight? And why here, in a neighborhood that had always felt safe? Police arrived swiftly. Officers began canvassing the area, looking for witnesses, but the streets were nearly empty. Surveillance cameras provided limited footage. A blurred figure, a mask, a hurried escape. The trail quickly went cold. Without additional clues, the investigation risked stalling. But then Rex, the K-9 unit, was called in. Trained to detect scents even in challenging conditions, Rex had a reputation for accuracy. Officer Daniels, his handler, arrived with a quiet confidence that only years of working with a dog Rex could bring. At the crime scene, Rex sniffed the floor, his nose to the ground. He paused at the threshold, nostrils flaring, catching the faintest trace of the intruder's scent. He darted toward the alley behind the store, ears alert, tail held high. Daniels followed, keeping pace, careful not to interfere. The trail led through trash bins and past parked cars, winding through back streets where human memory could not follow. For hours, Rex and Daniels navigated the maze-like alleys, moving silently but purposefully. The dog's nose never wavered. Every twist, every turn, every pause in Rex's behavior carried meaning. By mid-afternoon, Rex had led the officers to a small abandoned shed at the edge of the neighborhood. There, hidden beneath old tarps, were items stolen from the store: cash, a few candy boxes, and a backpack belonging to the suspect. The discovery was pivotal, not only because it provided concrete evidence, but because it validated Rex's tracking abilities. Forensic teams photographed and cataloged the evidence, while the suspect, whose identity had been partially traced through this trail, became the focus of the investigation. Yet, despite the breakthrough, the case was far from simple. The defense later argued that the dog's behavior could be coincidental, that scent trails could mislead even the most trained animals, and that human interpretation might distort what actually happened. Meanwhile, back at the courthouse, the story of Rex's investigation became the backbone of the prosecution's case. Witnesses were called to recount the sequence of events, emphasizing Rex's precise behavior. Officer Daniels described each moment in detail, from the initial scent pickup at the store to the eventual discovery of stolen items. He didn't hesitate, Daniels testified. Every turn, every stop, Rex knew exactly where to go. There's no doubt in my mind that he identified the correct path. The courtroom listened intently, absorbing the meticulous description of a dog performing investigative work with almost human-like judgment. Yet the defense remained skeptical. They brought forward animal behavior experts, questioning whether the dog could truly distinguish between different human scents or whether his reactions were influenced by subtle cues from his handler. Dogs are intelligent, yes, an expert explained, but they are not infallible. Training can only go so far, and behavior can be misinterpreted in high-stress situations. The words hung in the air, planting seeds of doubt. Would the jury be swayed by this argument, or by Rex's undeniable track record of accuracy? While adults debated the nuances of law and animal behavior, the little girl remained an unassuming observer. She had been fascinated from the beginning by Rex's calm and steady presence. Unlike the adults, who measured every word and gesture, she responded instinctively, drawn to the dog in a way that defied logic. Children often see the world differently, unencumbered by skepticism or fear. For her, Rex was simply magnificent, a large, gentle companion capable of incredible feats. She didn't yet understand the legal implications of the case, but she sensed the tension and importance of what was happening. The prosecution decided to demonstrate Rex's abilities in court, using a controlled exercise to replicate the events of the investigation. Items connected to the robbery were placed strategically, and Rex was asked to identify them. The demonstration would serve as visual evidence showing the jury the dog's accuracy firsthand. The defense remained cautious, ready to argue that courtroom conditions could confuse the dog, that artificial setups lacked the authenticity of real-world tracking. Yet everyone present understood that this demonstration carried weight. It could make the difference between conviction and acquittal. Preparation for the demonstration required careful choreography. Daniels guided Rex through the sequence multiple times before the trial, ensuring that the dog's reactions would be clear, observable, and interpretable. Even with preparation, however, there was no guarantee. Dogs, like humans, have moods and reactions that can vary unexpectedly. The courtroom, filled with unfamiliar scents, sounds, and eyes, was an entirely new environment. The team worried, but quietly. Beneath the surface, they also trusted Rex. If anyone could handle the pressure, it was him. Meanwhile, word of the case had spread through the neighborhood and local media. Stories highlighted the unusual aspect of relying on a police dog in court. Headlines read, "Canine unit plays pivotal role in robbery case," and dog tracks suspect through maze of streets. Some readers expressed skepticism, questioning the validity of animal testimony. Others were fascinated, intrigued by the prospect that a trained dog could influence human judgment in a serious legal setting. For the little girl's family, the attention was secondary. They were more concerned with her experience, hoping she would remain calm and unaffected by the adult world surrounding her. The day of the demonstration arrived, and the courtroom was ready. The prosecution's table displayed objects from the original investigation: a crumpled candy wrapper, a cash-stained receipt, a backpack partially unzipped. The jury leaned forward, eager to observe the demonstration firsthand. Rex sat obediently beside Daniels, ears pricked, gaze steady. Every step the dog had taken during the original investigation had led to this moment. The little girl watched, her curiosity growing, sensing something remarkable was about to happen. Unbeknownst to anyone, her small, innocent presence would become the catalyst for a moment no one would forget. As Officer Daniels gave the first cue, Rex moved. He approached the objects, sniffed deliberately, and indicated the items connected to the crime. The demonstration was flawless, at least, as flawless as a real dog could perform under pressure. Gasps and murmurs spread through the courtroom. Jurors exchanged glances. The defense's skepticism began to waver, though the attorney remained composed, planning counter-arguments. The moment was critical, a tipping point in the trial. And then, as if guided by intuition rather than training, the little girl rose from her seat, taking her first steps toward Rex. Her actions would shift the focus in ways no adult, no lawyer, no jury member could have anticipated. In that instant, the courtroom became charged with quiet anticipation. The story of a robbery, of evidence meticulously tracked and verified by a dog, of human doubt and expert testimony all converged in a single, simple moment. A child moving toward a police dog, drawn by curiosity, courage, and innocence. And in the stillness before she spoke, everyone felt it, an unspoken sense that the ordinary rules of procedure and skepticism might yield to something extraordinary, something that could change the course of the case forever. The courtroom had settled into a tense, almost electric rhythm. Every movement seemed magnified. The shuffle of papers, the tapping of pens, the faint creak of polished wood under restless feet. Jurors leaned forward, straining to catch every detail. The judge sat tall on the bench, his expression stoic, hands folded in front of him, observing with measured interest. Yet even he couldn't suppress the flicker of curiosity in his eyes, a subtle acknowledgement that this case was unlike any other he had presided over. At the front of the room, Rex, the police dog, stood beside Officer Daniels, alert but calm. The dog's gaze swept the courtroom methodically, as if cataloging every face, every sound, every scent. There was an almost imperceptible tension in his posture, a blend of training, instinct, and awareness. Daniels kept a careful hand near Rex's collar, ready to guide him through the upcoming demonstration, but careful not to give any hint or cue. The courtroom watched, waiting to see how a dog trained for streets and alleys would behave in the rigid formal environment of a courtroom. The defense attorney rose again, adjusting his tie and glancing at the jury with a practiced expression of concern. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth and persuasive, "we are about to witness a demonstration. Yes, but we must remember, a dog, no matter how well trained, is not a human witness. His reactions can be influenced by numerous factors, by suggestion, by environmental cues. We cannot rely on instinct alone when a person's freedom hangs in the balance." His words were precise, deliberate, designed to plant doubt. He knew that if he could make the jury hesitate, even slightly, the scales could tip in his client's favor. Across the room, the prosecution countered, presenting a clear, calm argument. "Rex has undergone years of specialized training," Officer Daniels explained during testimony. "He has tracked scents across miles, located stolen property, and assisted in apprehending suspects. His actions are not guesses, they are deliberate, precise responses to evidence. Today, we demonstrate his capabilities to show the reliability of his behavior and the accuracy of his tracking in this case." The words were met with quiet nods from some jurors, though skepticism lingered in others' expressions. The atmosphere became a tightrope walk between confidence and tension. Every whisper, every cough, every creak seemed amplified, echoing off the tall, austere walls. The judge tapped the gavel lightly, signaling that all eyes must remain forward. Reporters scribbled furiously, capturing the precise details, aware that this was no ordinary courtroom story. Cameras flashed occasionally, though not loudly enough to distract Rex. The dog, remarkably undisturbed, stood with the poise of a veteran professional. Even in this unnatural environment, he was ready. Meanwhile, the little girl remained seated with her mother, observing with wide eyes and a natural curiosity. She had sensed the seriousness of the situation, but was not afraid. Children, unlike adults, often interpret the world through instinct and emotion, rather than analysis and strategy. She was drawn to Rex, not because of the crime, not because of the courtroom, but because of an unspoken connection she felt to the dog. She leaned slightly forward, gripping her mother's hand, her little legs swinging beneath her chair. Every so often, she tilted her head, studying Rex's movements and expressions, as though trying to understand him. The prosecution decided it was time to proceed with the demonstration. Daniels knelt slightly, giving Rex a gentle, reassuring pat. "Show them, boy," he whispered, calm and steady. Rex's ears flicked, and he began to move toward the objects placed on a low table. The crumpled candy wrapper, the partially unzipped backpack, the receipt with faint fingerprints. Each step was deliberate, measured, his nose twitching as he analyzed the items. Jurors leaned forward, some skeptical, some astonished, as the dog indicated the items connected to the crime. The precision was remarkable, yet the defense maintained its composure, ready to cast doubt. Tension built with each passing second. The dog's movements were flawless, yet the courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. Could instinct alone convince a jury? Could an animal, incapable of words, convey truth and certainty with behavior alone? The judge watched intently, fingers steepled, while the audience collectively felt the significance of the moment. There was something extraordinary, unfolding, a convergence of training, instinct, and human interpretation, all being tested under the unyielding scrutiny of the law. And then, without warning, the unexpected happened. The little girl began to rise from her seat. The movement was subtle at first, just a shift in her small frame, but it did not go unnoticed. Whispered reactions spread through the audience. "She's going to the dog." "Is she allowed?" Murmurs escalated as she toddled confidently toward Rex. She did not hesitate. She did not falter, and she certainly did not seem intimidated by the serious courtroom setting. All eyes turned toward her, curiosity mingling with apprehension. This tiny figure, barely taller than the judge's bench rail, had drawn the attention of every adult present. Her mother's face registered a mix of anxiety and pride, a silent plea for caution barely masking wonder. "Sweetheart, be careful," she whispered, but her words were more about maintaining composure than instructing her child. The girl's intent was clear. She wanted to reach Rex. The audience watched in awe as she approached, her steps small yet deliberate. The courtroom had been tense, formal, and structured now. It was humanized by a single child, her innocence cutting through the rigid walls like sunlight through a storm. As she reached Rex, the courtroom seemed to pause. The dog's ears flicked slightly, and he shifted his stance, attentive yet calm. There was no fear, no hesitation, just recognition. She knelt slightly, her small hands reaching toward his fur, and spoke softly, almost inaudibly. "It's okay," she said. The words were simple, unassuming, yet the effect was immediate. Rex relaxed fully, his body language open, ears softening, tail wagging gently. Adults gasped, some whispered, and even the judge allowed a faint smile. Attention in the room transformed. Where moments before there had been skepticism and doubt, now there was awe. Observers realized that the child's innocence had bridged the gap between human uncertainty and the dog's instinctive knowledge. The defense attorney's poised arguments faltered slightly, as he had never anticipated that a 3-year-old could influence the perception of evidence in such a subtle, powerful way. The jury leaned forward, captivated not only by the dog's performance, but by the child's unexpected impact on the demonstration. Daniels allowed Rex to follow the girl's cues, noting how the dog responded calmly and accurately to the presence and reassurance of the child. This was no trained trick. It was an authentic interaction that revealed the dog's natural tendencies and confirmed the reliability of his investigative behavior. Jurors whispered among themselves, reporters scribbled furiously, and even seasoned courtroom observers felt the profound uniqueness of the moment. A simple act of trust and comfort had created a clarity that months of debate and expert testimony had struggled to achieve. In that charged atmosphere, the courtroom experienced a rare convergence of innocence, instinct, and justice. What had begun as a routine procedural demonstration became a historic moment, a reminder that even in the most formal, structured environments, the simplest acts of empathy and understanding can shift perspectives in ways no one anticipates. The little girl, oblivious to her influence, patted Rex gently and smiled. The dog, attentive yet relaxed, remained focused but calm, demonstrating precisely the evidence the prosecution had hoped to convey. For the adults, this moment would remain unforgettable. They realized the truth sometimes does not announce itself through arguments or analysis alone. Sometimes it emerges quietly, unexpectedly, from the smallest of voices in the room. The courtroom's tension, thick and palpable just moments ago, had transformed into a sense of wonder and clarity. The demonstration continued, but the energy had shifted irrevocably. The audience understood that they were witnessing something extraordinary. A 3-year-old child, speaking 2 words, changing the dynamics of a serious legal proceeding with nothing more than innocence and trust. The little girl's small footsteps echoed softly against the polished wood of the courtroom floor, a rhythm that contrasted sharply with the hushed tension in the room. All eyes followed her tiny figure, moving steadily toward Rex. The police dog, who had already demonstrated his impressive abilities in tracking stolen items. The jury leaned forward, reporters held their breath, and even the judge's stern gaze softened as curiosity and anticipation filled the chamber. No one could have predicted that a 3-year-old child would soon play a pivotal role in a case that had gripped the city's attention. Her mother's hand hovered just inches away, ready to guide her if needed, yet she allowed the child's natural curiosity and courage to lead. The girl's wide eyes were fixed on Rex, who sat alert, tail low, ears twitching at every sound. It was a mutual recognition, a silent acknowledgement between the child and the dog. The room seemed to pause, the air thick with expectation. For a moment, the courtroom's tension, built over days of investigation and hours of legal argument, gave way to a quiet, almost magical stillness. Rex, trained to respond to commands, did something unexpected. He focused entirely on the little girl. The dog's body language shifted subtly, ears forward, stance attentive, tail relaxed. There was no fear, no aggression, only an attentive calmness that seemed to invite interaction. The jury, lawyers, and spectators leaned in, realizing that this interaction was not only unusual, but potentially transformative. The child's presence, innocent and unassuming, was having an effect on the dog that no one in the courtroom could have engineered. With deliberate care, the little girl knelt slightly, lowering herself to Rex's level. Her small hands hovered over his golden brown fur, unsure whether to touch him or simply observe. She tilted her head, studying his face with the kind of curiosity that only a child could muster. She did not speak yet. She simply looked at him, an unspoken question in her eyes, as if asking whether he could understand her. In that moment, everyone watching felt a sense of quiet awe. A trained K9, one of the most precise and disciplined in the city, was responding to a tiny child in a way that was entirely unprompted. Then softly, almost like a whisper meant only for Rex, she spoke 2 words. "It's okay." The words were simple, unassuming, yet carried a weight no adult in the room could have anticipated. The dog's ears perked, his body relaxed, and he sat calmly, focusing entirely on the child. The courtroom reacted immediately. Gasps spread through the audience. Some covered their mouths in astonishment, while others leaned forward, straining to understand what had just occurred. The judge's eyes widened slightly, a rare sign of surprise in an otherwise composed expression. Officer Daniels, trained to observe and interpret every nuance of Rex's behavior, allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible nod. The dog's response was extraordinary. Previously, Rex had been attentive, but slightly tense during the courtroom demonstration, a natural reaction to unfamiliar surroundings. But the little girl's words, spoken with innocence and trust, had calmed him completely, revealing a new level of focus and reliability. It was a subtle shift, yet one that carried profound implications for the demonstration and the case itself. The defense attorney paused mid-sentence, caught off guard by the unexpected scene unfolding before him. His carefully prepared arguments, intended to sow doubt about the dog's behavior, now seemed almost trivial in comparison. The jury's attention had shifted, captivated not just by the dog's demonstrated abilities, but by the unanticipated human-animal connection in front of them. Even seasoned courtroom observers, accustomed to drama and legal maneuvering, were spellbound. This was no longer just a trial. It was a moment of wonder, an intersection of innocence, instinct, and justice. The little girl reached out gently, resting her hand lightly on Rex's shoulder. The dog leaned slightly into her touch, as if acknowledging her presence and trust. It was an unspoken conversation, one of empathy and mutual understanding that transcended words. The courtroom was silent, every spectator holding their breath. Some jurors whispered softly to each other, recognizing the significance of what they were witnessing. The child's calm assurance had revealed a side of the dog that no adult, no handler, and no expert could have fabricated. For a few minutes, time seemed to slow. The little girl and Rex remained connected, a quiet, almost sacred moment unfolding amid the formal proceedings of the courtroom. Officer Daniels observed every detail, noting how the dog's previous tension and uncertainty had melted away in response to the child's presence. The prosecution watched with anticipation, understanding that this interaction could validate Rex's reliability in ways that testimony alone could not. Even the defense recognized the undeniable effect. The child's simple, genuine words had illuminated the dog's behavior in a way that could not be disputed. The girl then stood slowly, hands still resting lightly on Rex's back. She looked up at the audience, her expression serene and proud, completely unaware of the extraordinary impact she had just made. The courtroom erupted in soft applause, a mixture of awe and delight, though quickly hushed by the judge. The reporters scribbled furiously, realizing that this moment would make headlines. Cameras captured the scene, though no image could truly convey the emotional depth of what had occurred. A 3-year-old child, speaking 2 words, had influenced the perception of a trained police dog in a serious legal proceeding. The defense attorney finally spoke, his voice measured but tinged with astonishment. "Your Honor," he said carefully, "it appears the dog has responded remarkably to an external factor outside of controlled commands." The courtroom murmured. Indeed, the dog's behavior, previously questioned, now seemed more credible than ever. The jury, jurors who had been skeptical of relying on a canine witness, were now visibly affected. They had witnessed something authentic, uncontrived, and profoundly human. A bond between a child and a dog that transcended skepticism and technical arguments. Officer Daniels gave Rex a quiet command to continue the demonstration. This time, the dog followed the exercise with perfect precision, identifying the stolen items exactly as he had during the investigation. The difference was clear. Rex's behavior was no longer tense or tentative. It was confident, accurate, and fully trustworthy. A courtroom witnessed, firsthand, that the dog's instincts and investigative skills were not only intact, but validated in an extraordinary way by the simple reassurance of a child. As the demonstration concluded, the little girl returned to her mother's lap, clutching her stuffed rabbit with the quiet pride of someone who had unknowingly changed everything. The courtroom buzzed with subdued excitement. The prosecution had achieved more than they could have hoped. The dog's reliability had been demonstrated beyond technical description, and a human connection had illustrated it in a way that transcended words and skepticism. The defense attorney sat silently, adjusting his papers, already recalibrating his strategy. The judge leaned back slightly, a rare soft smile crossing his face. "Let us proceed," he said, though it was clear even he had been moved by the scene. The courtroom, once dominated by formal procedures and debate, had been humanized by a single child's presence. The little girl's 2 words, "It's okay," had calmed a police dog, shifted the energy in the room, and revealed a truth that even the most precise arguments could not replicate. It was a moment that would be remembered long after the case concluded. The community, jurors, and even legal professionals would recount how a 3-year-old's innocence and empathy had intersected with trained skill to create a courtroom moment of profound clarity. The girl, unaware of her influence, simply watched the dog, occasionally patting his fur and smiling. In her eyes, Rex was not evidence, not a tool for justice. He was simply a friend, a companion who responded to her gentle words. And so, as Part 4 concluded, the courtroom had changed. What began as tension, skepticism, and debate had transformed into awe, connection, and undeniable proof of reliability. The little girl's role had emerged fully, her interaction with Rex, bridging the gap between doubt and certainty, skepticism and trust. For everyone in the room, The stage was now set for the next chapter, understanding how this simple act of innocence would ultimately influence the outcome of the trial and the lives it affected. The courtroom held its collective breath. All eyes were fixed on the little girl and Rex, the police dog who had been trained for years, yet now faced a challenge unlike any before. The room was tense, silent except for the soft rustle of papers and the occasional creak of polished wood. Even the judge seemed momentarily suspended in time, leaning forward, eyes wide with anticipation. The audience had seen the child approach the dog, kneel, and simply observe, but now, everyone waited for the moment that would define the rest of the trial. The little girl, barely 3 years old, tilted her head slightly, studying Rex's attentive eyes. She had no concept of the courtroom drama surrounding her. For her, this was not about evidence, argument, or verdicts. It was about connecting with the dog before her. Slowly, she reached a tiny hand toward Rex's muzzle, hesitating for a heartbeat as if asking for permission. Rex remained still, ears forward, eyes focused entirely on her. The room's tension heightened. Adults, lawyers, and jurors alike sensed that something extraordinary was about to occur. Then she spoke. Her voice, soft and clear despite its youth, carried only 2 words. "It's okay." The words seemed almost inconsequential, whispered as if to herself or to the dog alone. Yet their effect was immediate and profound. Rex's ears twitched, his muscles relaxed, and his tail, previously rigid in anticipation, swept slowly in a gentle wag. The courtroom seemed to exhale as the tension shifted into awe. Witnesses gasped, reporters scribbled furiously, and jurors leaned forward, captivated. Even the defense attorney's words faltered in his mind, caught off guard by the subtle yet undeniable impact of a child's simple reassurance. Officer Daniels, trained to read every nuance of Rex's behavior, allowed himself a rare, approving smile. The dog's earlier hesitations and subtle signs of stress had vanished. The simple, sincere words of the child had reassured him in a way that commands or treats could not. For the first time during the trial, the dog's behavior in the courtroom matched the precision he had shown in the field. Every step, every movement, every response now carried clarity and authenticity. The demonstration was no longer just a display, it had become proof, visible to all, that Rex's instincts were trustworthy. The audience was spellbound. Gasps and soft murmurs filled the room. Journalists captured the moment, knowing that this would be the defining image of the trial. A tiny child calming a powerful police dog with nothing more than 2 words. Jurors, previously skeptical of relying on a dog's behavior, exchanged glances, their expressions softened. The innocence of the child had humanized the courtroom, reminding everyone that understanding and trust could sometimes transcend technical expertise and argumentation. The defense attorney composed himself, but the impact was clear. His meticulous arguments about canine behavior and human misinterpretation seemed less powerful in the face of such authentic interaction. Rex's actions, guided not by manipulation, but by instinct and reassurance, demonstrated reliability in a way no expert testimony could fully replicate. The jury was witnessing a living proof of a bond between human and animal, a connection that cut through doubt and skepticism like sunlight through fog. The little girl's hand rested lightly on Rex's shoulder as she spoke again. Softly, "Good boy." The dog's tail wagged more confidently, and he shifted slightly to position himself beside her, alert yet calm. Every eye in the room followed the interaction, and a wave of emotion swept through the audience. The child's innocence had become a bridge, connecting the dog's training and instincts to human understanding in a profound, almost magical way. Even the judge allowed a faint, approving smile, acknowledging the extraordinary moment without breaking protocol. Officer Daniels used the opportunity to proceed with the demonstration. Rex, now fully relaxed and focused, moved deliberately toward the objects linked to the crime. Each item stolen, candy, a receipt, the suspect's backpack, was identified precisely, confirming the trail he had followed during the investigation. But the difference this time was unmistakable. Before the child's intervention, the dog had been alert but slightly tense, responses occasionally hesitant. Now, his confidence was evident in every movement. The courtroom witnessed a level of clarity and accuracy that had previously been theoretical. Jurors whispered softly among themselves, their skepticism giving way to recognition. The child's words had revealed the dog's reliability in a tangible, undeniable way. What had been disputed through expert testimony and debate was now evident in real time. Rex had tracked the evidence correctly, and his instincts could be trusted. A room, once divided by doubt, now shared a collective understanding. Adults, steeped in the complexities of law and argument, recognized the simple truth that a child's innocence could illuminate. Sometimes clarity comes not from experience or analysis, but from empathy, trust, and a quiet, unassuming voice. The little girl's impact extended beyond the dog. The courtroom itself seemed to shift. Where there had been tension, there was now a sense of calm wonder. Where there had been doubt, there was recognition. The prosecution's case gained weight, not merely through the demonstration, but through the undeniable authenticity revealed by the interaction. The defense, while maintaining composure, now faced a challenge that could not be countered by argument alone. The jury had seen the evidence of reliability manifested in an organic, human-animal connection. Parents and spectators in the gallery felt the emotional resonance of the moment. Some whispered to each other, marveling at the child's courage and the dog's responsiveness. A few dabbed at tears, recognizing the rare beauty of the scene, innocence and instinct converging in a courtroom, setting usually defined by tension and technicality. Social media would later carry headlines describing the extraordinary event, but for those present, nothing could fully capture the quiet power of witnessing a child's words transform a moment of uncertainty into undeniable clarity. As the demonstration concluded, the little girl stood slowly, her tiny hands brushing lightly against Rex's fur one last time. She turned back toward her mother, oblivious to the magnitude of what she had done. To her, Rex was a friend, a companion who responded to kindness, nothing more and nothing less. Yet in that simplicity lay the power. Her words had altered the courtroom's perception, validated the dog's behavior, and influenced the understanding of evidence in a trial that could impact lives. A judge allowed a brief pause before proceeding, acknowledging the extraordinary moment without breaking formalities. "Let us continue," he said, though his tone carried a quiet sense of appreciation. The courtroom had witnessed something unique, a reminder that justice is not only about procedures, rules, and evidence. It is also about trust, clarity, and the human capacity to perceive truth in unexpected ways. The little girl returned to her seat, holding her mother's hand, and Rex settled beside Officer Daniels once more, calm and focused. The audience remained engaged, fully aware that the trial had just reached a turning point. The two words, "It's okay," spoken with simplicity and sincerity, had transformed the courtroom dynamic, validating the dog's abilities and reinforcing the prosecution's case in a way that testimony alone could not. Even the defense attorney paused to reflect, recognizing the magnitude of what had occurred. Arguments about canine behavior, environmental factors, and human interpretation now had to contend with the living evidence of trust and instinct, revealed through a child's voice. Jurors whispered quietly among themselves, processing the authenticity of the moment. Every observer understood that the trial had shifted. What had been a routine demonstration had become something extraordinary, unforgettable, and profoundly moving. The courtroom's energy remained altered long after the demonstration concluded. Reporters scribbled notes furiously. Jurors whispered observations. And the judge maintained order, yet allowed the room to absorb the significance. The little girl's interaction with Rex had shown, unequivocally, that innocence could influence perception, that trust could clarify uncertainty, and that sometimes truth emerges in the simplest of ways. The moment would become a defining memory for everyone present, a rare intersection of childlike empathy and trained skill that left no one unmoved. As Part 5 concluded, the story's trajectory was clear. The little girl's words had not only impacted Rex, but had shifted the courtroom's understanding of the case. The prosecution gained an unexpected advantage. The defense faced a challenge of perception and authenticity, and the audience experienced a moment of human connection that transcended the technicalities of law. What had begun as skepticism had become awe, and what had begun as tension had transformed into clarity, trust, and the undeniable proof of instinct validated by innocence. The courtroom remained charged with the quiet electricity of awe, as if the very walls themselves had absorbed the extraordinary interaction between the little girl and Rex, the police dog. Jurors sat forward in their seats, their earlier skepticism replaced by something new. Trust. Not blind trust, but the kind forged through observation, instinct, and undeniable evidence. The simple words of a child, 2 words, "It's okay," had shifted the energy of the room, revealing a clarity that testimony and argument alone could not. Officer Daniels allowed Rex to return to his position beside him, standing tall and attentive once more. The dog, now fully calm, demonstrated every bit of the precision he had exhibited during the investigation. Each indication of the stolen items, the crumpled candy wrapper, the receipt, the suspect's backpack, was deliberate and unmistakable. The jury's eyes tracked each movement, and whispers of acknowledgement rippled quietly among them. What had once been questioned as potentially coincidental behavior was now indisputable, corroborated not just by training, but by the natural, uncontrived response to human kindness. The defense attorney rose, his carefully prepared arguments teetering on the edge of irrelevance. His voice, while calm, carried a tone of incredulity. "Your Honor, while the demonstration is certainly impressive," he began, glancing at the jury, "we must recognize that what has occurred involves a unique external influence. The dog's behavior may have been affected by a child's presence, which does not necessarily reflect his usual reliability in investigative situations." He paused, aware that the room's energy had shifted dramatically against him. "I caution the jury not to interpret this moment as definitive proof, but as a factor to consider alongside the totality of the evidence." Yet even as he spoke, the momentum had shifted irreversibly. Jurors whispered quietly among themselves, their expressions reflecting wonder and acknowledgement. The little girl, innocent and unassuming, had illuminated a truth that technical arguments could not fully undermine. Rex's behavior was deliberate, precise, and trustworthy. The connection between child and dog had humanized the evidence, offering a perspective that transcended logic and skepticism. The prosecution seized the moment. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Officer Daniels said, his voice steady but infused with quiet emotion, "you have witnessed something rare today. Rex has tracked stolen property with remarkable accuracy. You have also observed the instinctive bond between a child and a dog, demonstrating trust and authenticity beyond controlled commands. This is evidence not only of his skill, but of the reliability of his instincts and his training." His words resonated, a calm affirmation of what the jury had already seen with their own eyes. The little girl, unaware of the courtroom's focus on her, returned to her mother's lap, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She looked around curiously, her expression serene and content, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. To her, Rex was simply a friend, a companion who had responded to her gentle words. Yet her unassuming actions had created a ripple effect that would influence the case in ways no adult had anticipated. The room had shifted from skepticism to recognition, from tension to understanding, all because of a child's instinctive empathy. As the trial proceeded, witnesses were called to describe the investigation in more detail. Officers recounted Rex's tracking in the alleyways behind the convenience store, the careful observation of evidence, and the methodical approach that had led to the recovery of stolen items. Each statement, while factual, now carried the added weight of context. The jury had already seen the dog's abilities firsthand, amplified by the child's interaction. The credibility of the evidence became undeniable, reinforced by observation rather than abstract argument. The defense attempted to challenge this, introducing testimony from animal behavior experts. They discussed the potential for external influence, the nuances of canine responses, and the possibility of misinterpretation by handlers. Dogs are intelligent, yes, one expert testified, but their behavior can be influenced by environmental factors, including human presence. In a high-stakes environment like a courtroom, reactions may differ from field conditions. The jury listened intently, yet their previous observation of Rex's focused, precise, and calm behavior in the presence of the child made it difficult to dismiss the evidence. The little girl's role had inadvertently turned the tide. Her presence had transformed a technical demonstration into something tangible and emotionally resonant. The jury now had a reference point, a moment of clarity that bridged instinct, training, and trust. They had seen how a trained dog responded authentically to reassurance and comfort, confirming the accuracy of his investigative skills. The child's influence had added an irrefutable layer of authenticity that words alone could not achieve. Even the media in the gallery recognized the significance. Reporters scribbled notes, capturing the interaction in detail. They knew the story would resonate far beyond the courtroom. The idea that a child's simple, sincere words could influence the perception of evidence in a serious trial was extraordinary. Headlines would later reflect this. 3-year-old's words transform, courtroom demonstration, and child and police dog unite to reveal truth. For now, however, everyone in the room experienced the moment firsthand, feeling the quiet power of innocence and empathy intersecting with justice. The prosecution's closing argument leveraged this moment subtly but effectively. You have seen Rex's behavior in the field, confirmed by recovered evidence, the prosecutor said, and you have witnessed, here in the courtroom, his calm, precise, and deliberate responses when reassured by a child's simple words. This is a demonstration of authenticity, trust, and reliability, qualities that cannot be fabricated or trained into an instinctive reaction. The evidence is clear, and the truth is before you. The courtroom seemed to lean forward collectively, absorbing the weight of the statement. The jury's perspective had evolved. What had begun as a technical debate over canine behavior had transformed into a tangible, emotional understanding of reliability and truth. The little girl's innocence had clarified doubt, simplified complexity, and humanized the evidence in a profound and unforgettable way. Even the defense attorney had to acknowledge the difficulty. He maintained composure, presenting final arguments and urging the jury to consider all perspectives. But the momentum had shifted. The trial, previously dominated by skepticism and debate, was now influenced by authenticity and trust, the intangible yet powerful force brought by the presence of a single, unassuming child. By the end of the day, it was clear that the little girl's interaction with Rex had created a turning point. Her 2 words, "It's okay," had not only calmed a police dog, but had fundamentally shifted perceptions in the courtroom. Evidence that had been questioned or doubted was now reinforced by observation, instinct, and authenticity. The courtroom, once tense and uncertain, now carried a sense of awe and quiet recognition of a truth that transcended technicalities. As the session concluded and the jury retired to deliberate, the atmosphere remained charged with reflection. The little girl clutched her mother's hand, unaware of the extraordinary role she had played. The courtroom staff, reporters, and observers carried with them the memory of a moment where innocence, instinct, and truth converged. Officer Daniels knelt beside Rex, giving the dog a gentle pat and whispering praise, acknowledging the dog's calm precision and resilience in an unfamiliar environment. In the gallery, spectators whispered softly, marveling at the unforeseen impact of a child's words. Conversations revolved around the idea that sometimes justice is not only a matter of law, but of empathy, perception, and human or even animal instinct. The trial had reached a stage where clarity and understanding were no longer abstract concepts. They were witnessed, lived, and undeniable. As Part 6 concluded, the stage was set for the final chapters of the story. The girl's words had turned the trial in favor of clarity and trust, and the jury now faced a verdict informed by more than evidence alone. It was informed by a living demonstration of reliability, instinct, and the power of innocence. What followed would decide the outcome of the case and leave the courtroom forever marked by a moment no one would ever forget. The courtroom was quiet as the jury filed back in after hours of deliberation. Each step of their procession seemed to echo like a drumbeat, building suspense that hung heavy in the air. Spectators leaned forward, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the jury box. Even the judge, who had presided over countless trials, appeared unusually attentive, sensing that this moment carried a gravity beyond the usual formalities. The tension was palpable, but beneath it all was an undercurrent of anticipation. The trial had been extraordinary, and the outcome now rested entirely in the hands of 12 individuals who had witnessed something few in history could claim to have seen. The little girl sat on her mother's lap, clutching her stuffed rabbit and swinging her legs slightly. To her, the proceedings were only faintly comprehensible, a world of serious faces and hushed voices. Yet she sensed the quiet excitement and the subtle anticipation, responding instinctively by remaining calm and still. Rex, the police dog, sat beside Officer Daniels, alert but relaxed, his golden brown eyes scanning the room with gentle attentiveness. The dog seemed to understand that the trial's conclusion was near, and his calm demeanor reflected the trust he had received from the little girl. The judge adjusted his robe and tapped the gavel lightly, signaling that the jury would announce their decision. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the faint whisper of the little girl's mother, who held her daughter close. "It's all right," she whispered, though it was as much reassurance for herself as for the child. The jurors looked solemn, their faces betraying little, though subtle hints of resolve and contemplation were visible. For weeks they had deliberated over evidence, testimony, and expert opinion, but no single piece had carried the emotional weight and clarity of the moment. They had witnessed the little girl calming Rex, affirming his reliability in a way no argument could challenge. The foreperson of the jury stood, clearing their throat, and in that instant, the courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. Every person present understood that this was the culmination of not just a legal process, but of an extraordinary convergence of human perception, instinct, and trust. "We, the jury, find the defendant." The words trembled slightly on the edge of suspense, and all eyes were fixed on the foreperson. "Guilty on all counts," the foreperson concluded. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Some jurors whispered quietly among themselves, their relief and affirmation palpable. The judge nodded, confirming the announcement with a measured tone. "So be it," he said, tapping the gavel decisively. The defendant remained motionless, a mask of disbelief on his face, while the prosecution team, exchanged subtle glances of validation and triumph. Officer Daniels allowed a small sigh of relief to escape, brushing his hand across Rex's fur in silent acknowledgement of the dog's steadfast performance. The little girl, oblivious to the legal significance of the announcement, looked up at Rex and whispered, "Good job." The dog responded with a gentle wag of his tail, as if acknowledging her praise. The courtroom, witnessing this simple exchange, seemed to exhale collectively, the tension giving way to a mixture of relief, awe, and quiet celebration. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, knowing they had witnessed a story that would captivate the public imagination. A child and a dog had played a pivotal role in the outcome of a serious trial. The prosecution team approached Officer Daniels and Rex, offering congratulations and thanks. "You both did incredible work," the lead prosecutor said, smiling warmly. Daniels nodded, humility in his expression, but pride in his eyes. Rex, oblivious to human accolades, remained calm, his presence a silent testament to the precision and reliability that had been crucial in securing justice. The little girl's family smiled, relieved and proud, unaware that their daughter's simple words had shaped the courtroom, dynamic in ways even seasoned attorneys could not have anticipated. The defense attorney, while maintaining professionalism, could not hide a trace of resignation. The courtroom's outcome had been influenced not just by evidence, but by the authenticity of observation, the undeniable clarity provided by the child's interaction with Rex. He nodded politely to the judge and jury, acknowledging the verdict while quietly reflecting on how an unexpected factor had shifted the case's trajectory. Even seasoned legal professionals recognized that justice had, in this instance, intersected with something more profound: human empathy and instinct. As the courtroom began to disperse, conversations buzzed quietly, filled with astonishment and admiration. Spectators recounted the child's bravery, the dog's calm precision, and the extraordinary moment where innocence and instinct had shaped the outcome of a serious trial. Reporters whispered eagerly, preparing headlines that would resonate nationally and even internationally. The story was extraordinary. A 3-year-old's 2 words had changed the course of a courtroom demonstration and, ultimately, influenced the verdict of a criminal trial. Outside the courthouse, the atmosphere was equally electric. Members of the public, unaware of the details of the trial, spoke in hushed tones about the remarkable story that had unfolded. Social media platforms buzzed with discussion, videos of the child and Rex circulating rapidly, capturing hearts with their simplicity and authenticity. "A child and a police dog," one post read, "showed the world that trust, kindness, and empathy can illuminate the truth in ways no argument ever could." The story transcended the boundaries of the courtroom, touching people's hearts across the nation. Inside, the little girl returned to her mother's car, still clutching her stuffed rabbit. She had no concept of headlines, social media, or courtroom procedures. To her, the day had been about visiting a friend, patting a dog, and speaking words that seemed important. Yet in her innocence lay the power that had shifted the courtroom. Simplicity, sincerity, and trust had revealed authenticity where debate and skepticism had once prevailed. Rex, calm and obedient, followed Daniels into the vehicle, a quiet companion who had fulfilled his role with precision and grace. The community's response was immediate. Local news stations aired footage of the courtroom, highlighting the extraordinary interaction between child and dog. Interviews with jurors emphasized the impact of witnessing authenticity firsthand. Citizens marveled at how innocence had clarified doubt, transformed perception, and affirmed truth in a context often dominated by technicality and argument. The story became a symbol of the unexpected ways in which justice, trust, and empathy can intersect, leaving an enduring impression on all who witnessed it. Even within the legal community, the case sparked discussion. Lawyers, judges, and law enforcement professionals debated the implications of non-traditional factors influencing courtroom perception. Yet universally, they acknowledged one truth. The clarity brought by the little girl's words and Rex's response had been undeniable. It was a rare moment where instinct, training, and human compassion had converged to affirm truth in a profoundly visible and meaningful way. For the little girl's family, the aftermath was a mixture of pride and amazement. Friends and neighbors congratulated them, yet no words could fully capture the significance of the moment. The child had not sought recognition, fame, or influence. She had acted instinctively, guided by empathy and trust. Yet those two simple words, "It's okay," had left an indelible mark, not only on the trial, but on everyone present in the courtroom. They had witnessed a story that would be told for years, how innocence and instinct could intersect with law and evidence to illuminate truth. As evening fell, the courthouse emptied, leaving behind echoes of a trial that had been extraordinary in every sense. Officer Daniels and Rex returned to the precinct, their work complete, while the little girl slept peacefully that night, unaware of the lasting impact of her actions. The verdict, delivered with clarity and finality, was not just a legal conclusion, it was a testament to the power of empathy, observation, and instinct in shaping human understanding. Part 7 concluded with the courtroom transformed, the trial resolved, and a quiet recognition that extraordinary moments can arise in the most ordinary circumstances. The little girl, the dog, and the convergence of innocence and precision had created a story that would resonate far beyond the walls of the courthouse, leaving a legacy of wonder, hope, and the enduring power of trust. The courthouse doors swung open to a crisp autumn afternoon, sunlight spilling across the steps and highlighting the lingering excitement outside. Reporters jostled for position, cameras trained on the little girl and her family, and whispers of amazement floated through the crowd. Across the city, news outlets broadcast the story that had captured the nation. A 3-year-old's 2 simple words had transformed a courtroom demonstration, validated a police dog's instincts, and played an unexpected but pivotal role in securing a conviction. The trial's resolution had already become legend, and its implications would resonate far beyond the immediate case. For the little girl, the day was nothing extraordinary. She held her mother's hand, clinging to her stuffed rabbit, and glanced curiously at the bustle surrounding her. To her, the world had not shifted. She had spoken gently to Rex, her words chosen instinctively. Yet in that innocence lay profound power. Adults, seasoned officers, and even jurors recognized that the simplicity of a child's empathy had illuminated a truth they had spent days dissecting in legal arguments. In essence, her words had served as a bridge between human perception and instinct, creating clarity in a way that no testimony could replicate. Officer Daniels, ever vigilant yet quietly proud, knelt beside Rex as they prepared to leave. "Good job, boy," he whispered, patting the dog's head. Rex responded with a soft wag of his tail, seemingly aware that his calm, precise behavior had played a critical role in the trial's outcome. While officers often celebrated successful investigations or recoveries, this moment carried a different significance. It was not only about enforcing the law. It was about authenticity, trust, and the unique bond between human and animal. The demonstration, amplified by a child's instinctive reassurance, had proven that sometimes the most powerful forces in justice are not arguments or evidence alone, but empathy and connection. The city responded almost immediately. Headlines across newspapers and online media celebrated the story. 3-year-old calms police dog helps secure verdict. Innocence meets instinct. How a child changed the courtroom. Videos of the courtroom demonstration, capturing the girl kneeling and whispering to Rex, circulated rapidly. Social media buzzed with admiration and awe, with users sharing the story as a testament to human kindness. The power of innocence, and the extraordinary roles children can play, even inadvertently, in serious matters. The narrative was simple yet profound. Sometimes, clarity arises in the smallest voices. The jury members, reflecting privately after the trial, acknowledged the lasting impression the girl had made. One juror, speaking off the record, said, "We had debated evidence, questioned procedures, and discussed canine behavior extensively. But when we saw her speak to the dog, calm him, and influence his behavior naturally, it became undeniable. That authenticity informed our judgment in a way nothing else could." Their acknowledgement highlighted a rare truth. Human perception is not purely analytical. Observation, empathy, and instinct shape understanding just as much as formal evidence. And in this case, they had decisively informed the verdict. The defense attorney, though professional and composed, quietly reflected on the trial's unique dynamics. You prepare for every possible argument, every angle, every expert opinion, he later noted, but no preparation accounts for a 3-year-old's instinctive ability to influence perception. It was extraordinary, and in many ways, it was beautiful to witness. Even those on the opposing side of the courtroom recognized the event as unprecedented, a convergence of innocence and professionalism that highlighted the human side of justice. Back in the courtroom, many staff members recounted the trial for colleagues, marveling at the girl's courage and the dog's calm responsiveness. Court clerks, bailiffs, and reporters alike noted that while trials often involve drama, tension, and procedural complexity, rarely does one witness such a pure, unmediated moment of clarity. A child, unaware of legal stakes, had interacted with a trained police dog to reveal truth and reliability in a way that no words or analysis could replicate. It was a demonstration of authenticity that would be remembered for years to come. For the little girl, life returned to its familiar rhythm, yet subtle shifts were evident. Teachers noticed a quiet confidence in her interactions with classmates. Friends marveled at stories of her bravery, and her family observed a newfound recognition of her unique impact. She did not seek praise or attention, but the world had noticed her influence. In her simple words, "It's okay," she had illuminated the power of trust and empathy, leaving a permanent mark on those who had witnessed the event. Officer Daniels and Rex continued their work in law enforcement, but with a subtle acknowledgement of the extraordinary moment they had experienced. The dog, trained to track scents and assist in investigations, had demonstrated not only skill, but a capacity for instinctive responsiveness to human reassurance. Daniels often reflected privately on the lessons of that day, that authority and training are important, but so too are empathy, observation, and the power of simple, sincere gestures. Rex's calm demeanor under stress had been a testament to the potential of trust, whether in a child's words or an officer's guidance. Community response amplified the story's legacy. Citizens praised the police department for the dog's precision, marveled at the child's courage, and discussed the broader implications of trust and perception in justice. Public forums debated how non-traditional factors, like the presence of a child, might influence outcomes, not in a manipulative way, but as a demonstration of authenticity and clarity. The case became a reference point in discussions about canine reliability, courtroom dynamics, and the unexpected role of human compassion in legal processes. Educational programs began to feature the story as well. Schools and community groups highlighted the narrative of a child influencing a courtroom in a meaningful and positive way. Lessons emerged about observation, empathy, and the significance of small actions in shaping understanding. Children and adults alike were inspired by the idea that even in highly structured informal systems, innocence and kindness could have transformative effects. The story became a teaching tool, illustrating how human connection can clarify truth and reinforce trust. Years later, the trial continued to resonate. The little girl, grown and reflecting on the events, described her actions with humility. I just wanted to tell Rex it was okay. I didn't know it would matter. For those who had witnessed the courtroom, it was clear that her innocence had been the catalyst for a moment of clarity, transforming skepticism into certainty and tension into understanding. The story endured not merely as a legal anecdote, but as a testament to the unexpected ways that empathy and instinct can shape outcomes, revealing truth in the most human of ways. Rex, for his part, remained a loyal and reliable police dog, celebrated not only for skill, but for demonstrating the importance of instinctive clarity under pressure. He became a symbol of trust, reliability, and the profound impact of human-animal connection. His calm demeanor in the courtroom, influenced by the child's simple reassurance, was cited in law enforcement circles as an example of authenticity in action. The dog's legacy, intertwined with the little girl's, would endure far longer than the trial itself. The courthouse itself became a site of quiet reverence for those who had witnessed the trial. Court staff, legal professionals, and visitors would recount the story to newcomers, emphasizing the rarity of such an event, a child's empathy shaping perception, a dog's instinct confirming truth, and a courtroom moment transforming abstract evidence into undeniable reality. The story became part of the collective memory of the legal community, celebrated for its demonstration of human connection and its affirmation of justice beyond procedural formality. Ultimately, the trial's legacy was about more than evidence or conviction. It was about the extraordinary impact of seemingly small actions. A child, guided only by innocence and empathy, had altered perceptions, validated instinct, and illuminated truth. A dog, trained for precision, had responded authentically, confirming evidence and reinforcing trust. Together, they created a moment that transcended the boundaries of law, observation, and training, a reminder that sometimes clarity and justice emerge in the quietest, most unexpected ways. And so the story concluded, leaving behind a lasting impression of awe, inspiration, and reflection. The little girl and Rex had become more than participants in a trial. They were symbols of the transformative power of trust, kindness, and instinct. Their moment in the courtroom would be remembered, retold, and cherished for generations, a testament to the truth that even the smallest voice can create monumental change.